Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today's lecture is presented from the Center of the Study of Race and Ethnicity in America, CSREA. It's also co-sponsored by the Department of History, the Department of American Studies, and the Office of Institutional Diversity. CSREA is an interdisciplinary hub that aims to build community with the public and among scholars and students working on race and ethnicity in America. My name is Naoko Shibusawa, and I'm in the Department of History and American Studies, and I'm on the governing board of CSREA, or what Tricia Rose likes to call us, GB. And I also want to thank Tricia Rose for agreeing to invite Gary Okihiro. Of course, always Christina Downs and Caitlin Murphy, without which any of this could happen at all. So we're always forever grateful to them. And let me just start. One more other thing. We also invite you to attend a research seminar with Professor Okihiro tomorrow from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. at CSREA. So you guys are all invited to come if you can make it. There's still some spots. Not everyone can come, but if you can come, please do come. Gary Okihiro is Professor of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University and the founding director of Columbia Center for the Study of Race, of Ethnicity and Race. Before going to Columbia, Professor Okihiro was the director of Asian American Studies at Cornell University. He is a past president of AAAS, the Association for Asian American Studies, and he was quite appropriately a recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Studies Association, and he holds an honorary doctorate from the University of Ryukyu in Okinawa. Professor Okihiro received his PhD in history and African history from UCLA in 1976, but he is best known as one of the leading scholars of Asian American history and comparative ethnic studies. He is amazingly prolific. He has written 11 books. 11 books, right? In all his books, but particularly Cane Fires, 1991, Margins and Mainstream, 1994, Common Ground, 2001, Pineapple Culture, 2008, Island World, I'll stop, don't worry, 2009, and the subject of tonight's talk, Thirlwell Studies, Theorizing Liberation, just published this September. Professor Okihiro has urged us to rethink binaries and other divisions that have been naturalized in popular and scholarly discourse. Although he has helped shape the field of Asian American history and comparative ethnic studies, he is also actively working to transgress the boundaries that both define and constrain those fields. As Professor Okihiro says, academic disciplines can liberate, but they can also curb the imagination and deny political commitments. I think all of us can agree, especially now, more so than ever, that this is precisely what we need into the foreseeable future, both imagination and political commitment. So welcome.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Professor Shibusawa. In fact, I have to thank her because she's the one who invited me here, really. I mean, she asked about it, and So while I'm grateful to the Center for, what was it? Ethnicity and Race? Race and Ethnicity.
Center for the Study of Race and Ethnicity in America.
In America. And its director, Tricia Rose. Yeah. Hey, man, did I actually shake your hand before? Come on. Huh?
Welcome.
Oh. Thank you so much.
And she is the powerhouse. We love her on the G.
Yeah, all right. I'm really grateful to be here. Well, not really. I mean, I'm an old man, you know what I mean? Like, I'm on a phased retirement, and I just got to be teaching at Yale, and I have to take the train, and oh my God, I'm so tired now. Like I told the guy here, this is my happy hour. I'm supposed to be drinking wine now, and spacing out, but I'm trying to get my brain going to talk to you guys. Not that happy. I'm sorry. Yeah, kidding, okay? No, I'm really gratified that all of you have come here. and I appreciate that very much. I know that you guys were chorus, but that's okay. Right? No. No. Okay, that's wonderful. So I don't want to talk, I don't want this to be a monologue, so like I much prefer engagement, you know. But I'm hard of hearing. So if I don't hear your question, I'll be like, no, I won't even mention this. I won't even address your question, but you'll know that it's because like I don't hear it, okay? Yeah, so third world studies. Hey, what is it? Yeah, Theorizing Liberation. Third world, the book itself comes from my course that I've taught for about 10 years, I guess, at Columbia, and then right now at Yale. And it's called Third World Studies, or Introduction to Third World Studies, which I'm trying to imagine a field of study that was terminated on its birth. It was killed on its birth. And what I mean by that is in the fall of 1968, Third World students, or a coalition of the Black Student Union, a couple of Asian American, a Mexican American, and American Indian group joined together in this coalition called the Third World Liberation Front. Now think about that name, Third World Liberation Front. At that time, in 1968, the Third World conjured peoples of color. Latin America, Africa, Asia, the islands of the Pacific. People of color were placed within that umbrella of the Third World. And some of you read Vijay Prasad's book, and he describes the Third World as a project named by this French journalist, Albert Sauvé, who saw the world in the height of the Cold War in 1955 as three worlds. The first world being the capitalist world, the second being the socialist world, and the third world, the majority of mankind, or humankind. That's where we are. We're the third world. And the third world was being struggled over by the imperial powers, both of the first and second world. These students named themselves in solidarity with peoples of the third world who were seeking their self-determination, liberation from colonial rule. Now think about that. These are US students identifying themselves and their cause with the people of the third world. I was part of that generation, and our generation's interest principally in the US was with that war in Southeast Asia, which was an imperial war of expansion and conquest of that area. And we understood ourselves and our struggles in the US in concert with, in solidarity with, in identification with the peoples of the third world. Now, that's a remarkable thing. And what they realized, what they understood from their writings of the time, that they were part of this global liberation struggle that was about to change over 400 years of world history. Now you think about that. 400 years the world had been colonized by Europeans, and these third world nations were rising up in opposition to that colonial rule. They're all little students at San Francisco State College. They were part of this third world liberation movement. It was an immense project, an immense moment to imagine oneself in solidarity with that movement. Now, we know there are all sorts of problems with that identification and so forth, and yet it was, I think, a magnificent gesture on the part of those students to identify themselves with that, as opposed, for example, with the movement for equality in the United States, acquisition of civil rights, which we shouldn't denigrate, but they saw themselves as part of a bigger movement. They didn't name themselves Third World National Front. They National Liberation Front. Oh, wow, see, I need my wine. They didn't name themselves National Liberation Front, which was the names in Vietnam and in Algeria. They were national liberation movements. But the students saw themselves beyond the nation state and imagined themselves globally within this global struggle. The faculty, when they acquiesced, and the administration, they said, okay, after the longest strike in higher education in the US, we'll give you ethnic studies. That's what they said, right? They'll give you ethnic studies. That's an interesting moment. Third World Liberation Front demanding a third world curriculum given ethnic studies, which is the name we use today. That's why I'm saying third world studies was terminated at its inception. We were given ethnic studies. And I don't think that the students recognized that term or its genealogy, its intellectual genealogy, because if they did, they would reject it out of hand. Some of the faculty understood third world to conjure up liberation struggles, maybe Marxism, all of these sort of bad things. We'll give you ethnic studies. All right. I don't know where I'm going now. Huh? Okay, so maybe I should trace the genealogy for you of those terms and the meanings of them. Huh? Okay. Oh, wait, let me think. Okay, let me just do that intellectual genealogy first, okay? All right. So, third world studies, I believe, comes from 1900 with W.E.B. Du Bois, right? In London, in 1900, at the first Pan-African Congress, Du Bois said, the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. You all should know that phrase, right? The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. You might not have known that he said it right at the start of the century, the 20th century. He declared it in London, the seat of the British Empire, on which the sun never set. It was the biggest imperial power in the world at the time. The first Pan-African Congress met there, and Du Bois said that was the problem of the 20th century. The problem, he and others like Frantz Fanon said, is not the rising of the third world against colonial rule. It is colonial rule to begin with. The institution of imperialism, discursive and material, that encompass the world and that has been fed on the labor and the resources of people of color. Their land, their resources, their labor produce those great European empires. And Europe is rich because the third world is poor. They are relational. They exist in relation one with the other. Development is predicated on underdevelopment, right? So the problem of the 20th century begins there. And that is the start of this field of study called Third World Studies, right? It begins with anti-colonialism. It begins with anti-racism. Racism was the ideology that supported colonial rule. It justified the imperial project. And that's what Du Bois had in mind when he said the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. Right? So the ancestry of this field of study is pretty considerable. It doesn't start in 1968. It starts in 1900, I believe, okay? Yeah. All right. To contain that problem of the 20th century, a discourse arose called race relations. Race relations was a means by which to identify and to suppress the problem of the 20th century. Race relations followed the Enlightenment ideas about race. You guys know that, huh? You guys, do you know, like, when we talk about race, what are we talking about anyway? Huh? Huh? What? How would you sort of trace the idea of race, where to, and so forth? It arises, I think, right, with the European imperial project. Imperialism, or the spread of sovereignty, European sovereign estates across the border, beyond their borders, extraterritorial expansion, was accompanied by discourse, ideology, and language of rule. And that was a systematic way by which to classify, characterize, give attributes to, and rank people, lands, plants, animals. And that scheme was a continental scheme. Europe, Africa, Asia, America names the 4 major races that you know today. So it's a topographical, geographical determination of peoples. That organization you see everywhere, even today in like natural history museums. You go to Africa Hall, you go to Asia Hall, you go to Europe Hall, you see the people, plants, animals of each continent as if they were separate one from the other, when in fact they are not. Biotic communities cross these borders, even oceans. In Hawaii, where I come from, we have plants and animals that came across from America and from Asia before humans arrived there. These biotic communities violate those human inventions of continents as discrete entities and life forms as discrete entities. But that provided a means by which, say in like Linnaeus system of taxonomy, of ranking humans, describing their attributes. You know, the Linnaean system of the racializations is based on an old Egyptian idea of humors. Humors, you know, like joke telling. No? What are the humors? You guys know? Huh? Emotions. Sort of, yeah, which derive from bodily fluids. These are bodily fluids that determine one's sort of emotions or characters, along with one's stature, conformation of musculature, and so forth. These humors determine those 4 racial groups, or racialized groups. And you'll be surprised that those attributes remain in our discourse today. You know? For example, like phlegm is the bodily fluid that defines Africans. Phlegm means Africans are phlegmatic. You know? Slow, lazy. Those ideas persist to today. Oh, okay. Anyway, wait, what am I talking about anyway? These imperial scripts that accompany the actual material subjugation of the world, all right? And those discourses are what our subject matter is about, because it is about liberation, self-determination. That term itself, by the way, I mean, these are all European ideas, okay? Which is a problem. That is a problem in trying to devise a field of study that is liberated from Eurocentrism, European ideas. Those ideas in this book do not derive from third world people. It derives from Europeans, all right? And that's a major problem. But the major problem is that you have to use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. Regardless of what Audre Lorde said, I believe that we can do that. We can. We have to master those tools and deconstruct the master's house with those tools, but in the process, create an entirely new space, a new language, new ideologies that have no bearing with those ancestors. Okay? So it's a strategic move, only on way to a kind of liberating idea that might be only imagined at this point. That's why I conclude with the fourth world. Okay, but like we can talk about that. But anyway, all right. See, I'm going all over the place. Let me structure this. No, I don't like structure. I'm against structure. I'm against borders. We got to break them down, as Professor Shibusawa said. Okay, so like, wait, I was going to trace the genealogy of that idea, the idea of race relations. You don't understand, race relations was a means by which to colonize, all right? It identified, okay, Robert Park, a sociologist at the University of Chicago. And I'm sorry, I'm just picking on you guys at the front row. Let me look farther back. But Robert Park, a Korean-American guy at the University of Chicago. You guys know that, huh? Robert Park was not a Korean American, okay? Robert Park studied, guess who with? Huh? No! Who was the antagonist of Du Bois? Huh? Huh? Booker T. Washington. He was a research assistant for Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee. Hey, you guys are pretty good. Very good. All right. Bob, you guys have sharp students at Brown. Yeah. All right. I was a little embarrassed because at Yale, I read this passage. When in the course of human events, it becomes, where is that from? Nobody could identify that. The US Declaration of Independence, you know? Yeah. Anyway, wait, Booker T. Washington, all right? Yeah, at Tuskegee. He learned race relations there. You know who Booker T. Washington's master teacher was? Nobody would know him. Samuel Chapman Armstrong, right? When my wife and I went to Hampton Institute, he's the founder of Hampton Institute, all right, in Virginia. We went to the gate, and the guard at the gate approached us, and I said, do you know where the grave of Samuel Armstrong is? And she said, who? Samuel Chapman Armstrong, the founder of this university. No, don't have a clue. All right. So then we went inside, and we saw a cemetery at the back of the university grounds, and so we went there, and there was a guy there mowing the lawn, but it looked definitely like a military, an army cemetery because of the tombstones. I know that. They're standard throughout the world, okay? And we asked the guy, do you know another graveyard maybe in this place? And he said, oh, he began to, oh, you mean that old abandoned graveyard back that way? So we went back that way, and sure enough, we found old Samuel lying there with a rock at his head, lava rock from Hawaii. And at his feet, a granite rock from Williamstown. He went to Williams College. He was born in Hawaii. He was the son of missionaries in Hawaii. He was the one who started Hampton Institute. Hampton Institute educated recently freed slaves or African Americans to make them teachers so they can teach the masses of African Americans. Not teach them science, mathematics, philosophy, no. To teach them how to work with their hands, not with their minds. A manual education. That idea of subjection, of servitude, of staying in your place was what Booker T. Washington, at the Atlanta Compromise, agreed to. All right? Now, that's the genealogy of Robert Park. Robert Park took those ideas to Chicago, and he and others, colleagues at Chicago, started race relations. Race relations, Robert Park said, exist because there are race problems in this world. Like, for example, he says, in South Africa, there are these Africans who are rising up against the colonial masters there. They are a problem. That's how we study problems, you see, to contain them. His famous, Robert Park's, two problems in the US was the Negro problem and the Oriental problem, because these two races were visible. Physically, they could be distinguished, and thus they pose a problem for assimilation. All right? Race relations was a major sort of paradigm for the founders of sociology in the United States in the late 19th century. And race relations argued that segregation was a means by which to contain racial conflict and problems. As long as people, the subordinate group, remain contentedly in their places, cool. But if they started to try to gain equality and rights, then they become a problem, and we're going to have to figure out how to solve that, right? So, race relations. That's it, all right? Now, Boas, the anthropologist at Columbia, Franz Boas, separated race from ethnicity. They said culture or ethnicity is not coterminous with race. They used to believe that race and culture were coterminous, you see? That is, that if you're a particular racial group, you have a particular culture. He said that's false, all right? So ethnicity became another category, and ethnicity came to be defined at Chicago as ethnic studies. Ethnic studies was the means by which to study US diversity, late 19th century unprecedented immigration, very different from the previous immigrations from Southern and Eastern Europe, different cultures, religions, languages. How do we assimilate these immigrants is the problem of ethnic studies. Think about that now, you see? The students of the Third World Liberation Front were given that subject matter, that title, ethnic studies. And it's interesting that in their discussions of the faculty and the administration, they referred to African Americans as race relations, and Asians, Latinx, American Indians, as ethnic studies. They were considered ethnic groups. Hispanics in the US Census today are considered a cultural group, right? Not a race. Okay, well, so this is about third world studies. It involves the subject matter, which is power, and the locations and articulations of power. It involves the idea of nationalism from Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth, his chapter on national culture, how national culture was means of liberation, which is what the third world students believed in. Those nationalisms in turn, I think, led us into these dead ends of separate cells. African Americans, Asian Americans, Latinx, American Indians, they're not crossing. That's our own. We speak to our own communities and our own people. Even here at Brown, I'm sure, Asian American Studies classes are populated mainly by Asian American students, Latinx classes by Latinos, and American Indian and African Americans. Rarely, even under the rubric of third world studies, are the students moving into those classrooms of all the groups. We still, I think, fall under those racialized categories. It's empowering, that is those categories. Like Black Power was an amazing concept, but it also separates people. That's the problem.